Hey, welcome to the We're Better Together podcast. I'm Ian Stevenson.
And I'm Daniel Arduña. We come from different backgrounds, but we're working together. So our goal is to help you navigate being better together in the various sectors of your life by bringing you a once-a-month interview and some stimulating thoughts on the weeks in between.
We hope this podcast keeps you tracking on building something better together, whether it's your marriage, your family, your workplace. We want to serve you. So here's today's episode.
Welcome, friends. We are here with another 10-minute tune-up today. Ian and I are excited to dig into this idea of humility again. We spoke about this last month or the month before, but we want to take a different approach to this. We talked before about humility and being a good listener. Now we kind of want to talk about humility in kind of understanding your part, your place, what you bring to a team, but then also understanding what others bring to a team and celebrating the gifts that other people have as well, and being able to see how that comes together. Kind of walking with that kind of humility can help us to be better together. And so we're excited to dig into a little bit of this conversation. I know for myself, I think so often there's various places in my life growing up and now where being on sports teams, we're working in certain jobs. There's just such an element of team that is going on and trying to understand your place within that. I think one of the places that really comes to mind for me, Ian, is I think back to some of my early times working in ministry and can actually think about there was something inside of me early on that was okay with being second in command. And there was still this sense at times of wanting, maybe some of that pride creeps in, but there was this sense where I felt like I was okay being second in command and understanding that my boss above me was gifted in certain ways and I could be a support system to them. So how could I walk in such a way to help lift them up in their job? And there was something that really connected with me about this sense of collaboration. And I think early on, there was a development in my heart of wanting to be about collaboration and not just carrying something myself. But Ian, for you, and just to get us more into this conversation, that's just a little taste of maybe what we're talking about or a step in. But for you, what kind of comes to mind around this idea?
Man, so much comes to mind around this idea of humility and recognizing your part, but also celebrating other people's parts, right? So I think our human tendency, the thing that creates division and causes to pull us apart is when our pride gets in play. And we think that our part is the part, that our part's the most important part. So to your point, like to be able to have that position of being able to understand you're part of the team, and there might even be someone like your boss or whatever that knows more than you and can bring more to the whole contribution. So I think as we get into this topic a little bit today, what I want to really encourage our listeners to consider is in whatever aspect you're working for unity, you're fighting for unity in, do you clearly understand your part? We just took our team here at Trellis through a thing called Working Genius. And it's done by Patrick Lencioni. And it's a great assessment where you go through it and you understand your part. And as a team, when we had the conversation after taking it, it was so cool because it gave us a common language. We were able to understand where we need one another. And I think that's really the heart of this. And there's lots of other tools like that, right? There's Clifton Strength Finders. There's all kinds of different tests you can take that show you what you bring to the table. But I think what I want to challenge our listeners to do today is, do you know what you bring to the table? Do you understand your personality? Do you understand the skills that you might bring, whether it's to a sporting event or field, to your marriage, to your family? And do you bring it? Do you bring it with not pride, but bring it with humility? And so what does that look like, Daniel? That's what I wanted to ask you. When you really know what you bring and you bring it with humility, how would you help our listeners understand what that might look like?
Yeah, Ian, if I could even just take one step back from what you said, you just said something really good about needing to understand your strengths, your giftings. And you mentioned something within that too, that Clifton Strength Finders. What I haven't gone through what you ran your team through, but I've gone through the Clifton Strength Finders, and I think about what an asset that was to help me understand some of my specific strengths and how I could hone in on that. Now that I had understanding about that, and then when other staff members in communities where we've taken this, I see theirs, we have understanding there. There is something that can begin to happen that can battle against that pride that you mentioned. And something awesome that's happened with me in Clifton Strength Finders, let's say, if our listeners aren't familiar with it, there's this strength called woo, winning others over. That's my number one strength. Mm-hmm. That's one that immediately in my mind, I think about how it can be so challenged to be prideful with that one. But when other people begin to lift me up in that and say, hey, as we function as a company or organization, we see this gift set in you. Let's put you in certain situations where we let your wooing be an asset. And when people started to look at it, my pride started to go the other direction, less pride, more humility, because I then was able to look across the table at them and say, you know what, though, I see over here for you. You've got strategic. So as we chase after something over here, maybe I need to lean into strategy for you in what it is that we're looking at. And so as you talk about what that begins to look like, I think that's been a good example for me. And that's deeply come into play for me in this current job I have, co-pastoring. I'm in a co-leadership role with one of my closest friends. And we get to function in that way. We look at each other often and say, here's what it is that we're chasing after as a church. Hey, what aspect of this has my strengths? What aspects of this has my co-pastor's strengths? And we really do a good job of lifting each other up within that. And I've really seen the benefits of that, where it's not that we never have tension, but there's these less tensions and more coming together, being better together when we're able to acknowledge that. And not only that, but then celebrating it. When I see him operating in his gift sets, I encourage that. When he sees me operating in mine, he encourages that. So I think that's an example. Ian, what about for you within that, for yourself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think what humility looks like in that regard is, you understand your strengths, but you don't take your strengths too seriously. Like you understand what they are and you bring them, but then you recognize, as you just pointed out, the strengths in other people. And I think what humility looks like is you lift them up. Yeah. You point out those strengths. You talk about those strengths. You appreciate those strengths. And as you make a concerted effort to do that, it breeds more humility in you, more appreciation, and it allows you to work better together, which is the whole point here, right? So I think our tendency, though, is for whatever reason, sometimes we have insecurities and we don't feel too good about ourselves, or and so we push forward with pride because we want to be seen, we want to be recognized, and we're thinking more about ourselves than we are about others. And I think, the real key to working better together, to having an environment in your marriage, in your family, in your workplace, on your team, is that you choose, you absolutely decide that today you're not only going to bring the best you can, but you're going to look for those things in other people and you're going to speak into it. Like, you're going to lift them up. You're going to appreciate them. You're going to thank them, because we all see where people are lacking. We all see even where we're lacking. And sometimes we tend to dwell in those places too long. And I think what we've got to do in a humble way is rise out of that, see our contribution and appreciate that contribution in others, celebrate them, like celebrate those contributions, let them know. I think that's what it can look like.
Yeah, Ian, you just reminded me, as you talked about humility, in other words, submission, and this idea that I've even talked about with people, this mutual submission that happens in relationships or in a team. And in that mutual submission, if you're looking to lift each other up, this is what you're going to do. You're going to build each other up and continue to build each other up. When you're looking to serve the other, you end up actually lifting up both, versus the opposite of that, and walking in that pride can tear down both. And so if we can walk in mutual submission, we can do exactly what it is that you're saying. There's a humility that's happening that actually truly makes us better together.
So great example, bro. Great example. LeBron and Anthony Davis.
That's right. That is
last
right.
year.
That is right.
That's how they walked out that championship season last year. It was absolutely that, a mutual respect. They both brought what they could bring. They brought it with all their gusto. They led, they did everything, but they had a mutual submission and respect. So, I hope that this 10-minute tune-up encourages our listeners. Get out there this week, figure out what you can bring, get clearer on it, and encourage other people in what they're bringing. That's how you can work better together this week. Go for it.
That's right. We also just want to invite you too, if this is making a difference for you at all, if there are any nuggets that you're grabbing out of this, we just want to encourage you, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can also share our podcast from those places for others. If you think that there are things that we're sharing about that could impact other people's lives, we want to invite you to do so, to take this journey with us. So again, you can find us in those places. We would love for you to subscribe if you want to continue to listen in and receive from what it is that we're bringing. We see this as being community and wanting to engage with people in that way. So it's a way that we can serve others in this aspect. So we really look forward to continuing to do so. Look forward to our next 10-minute tune-up coming next week, and look forward to some more interviews coming up here soon in the future. We will see you all soon.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. If there's anything you heard today that was helpful to you, that you think might be helpful to somebody else,
please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can help others be better together as well.